In a small, quiet town in rural Mississippi, life moved at a slow pace. The streets were lined with modest homes, some painted bright colors to add cheer to the otherwise plain landscape. Among these houses stood an old trailer on the outskirts of town, where a young girl named Maya lived with her grandmother. Life wasn't easy for them. Money was tight, and every day brought its own set of challenges. But despite their struggles, there was one thing that kept Maya going: music. Maya had always loved to sing. From the time she was little, she would hum tunes while helping her grandmother around the house or walking home from school. Her voice carried a warmth and depth that seemed far beyond her years. It was as if all the emotions she couldn't put into words found expression through her songs. She sang gospel hymns she learned at church, soulful melodies inspired by legendary singers like Aretha Franklin, and even playful ditties she made up herself. For Maya, singing wasn't just a hobby. It was her escape, her way of dreaming about a better future. But outside the safety of her home, things weren't so kind. At school, Maya often felt invisible. She wore clothes that didn't quite fit because they were hand-me-downs, and her shoes were scuffed from years of use. She didn't have fancy gadgets or trendy backpacks like many of her classmates. Instead, she carried an old bag patched together with care by her grandmother. These differences made her an easy target for teasing. Some kids whispered cruel jokes when she passed by, while others laughed openly at her expense. Maya tried not to let it bother her too much. She kept to herself, burying her nose in books during recess, or finding quiet corners to sit alone. Still, the hurt lingered. Deep down, she wished someone would see past her worn-out clothes and notice the person beneath, the girl who dreamed big and worked hard despite everything stacked against her. One crisp autumn morning, the school announced an assembly. It was supposed to be a fun event where students could showcase their talents, whether it was playing an instrument, reciting poetry, or performing a dance routine. Teachers encouraged everyone to participate, saying it was a chance to celebrate each other's unique gifts. Most students signed up eagerly, excited to show off what they could do. But Maya stayed silent. The thought of standing in front of the entire school terrified her. What if people laughed? What if they thought she wasn't good enough? As the days went by, the buzz around the assembly grew louder. Posters went up in the hallways, and teachers reminded students to prepare their acts. Then came the day when Maya's name unexpectedly entered the conversation. During lunch break, a group of classmates approached her. They weren't being friendly. They were smirking, whispering among themselves before turning to her. One of them spoke up, loud enough for others nearby to hear. "Hey Maya," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "Why don't you sing something at the assembly? We've heard you hum under your breath all the time." The table erupted in laughter. Another chimed in. "Yeah, come on, Maya. Let's hear what you've got." Their words stung, but Maya recognized the intent behind them. This wasn't encouragement. It was a dare, a joke meant to embarrass her. Her cheeks burned red as she looked down at her hands, gripping her lunch tray tightly. Part of her wanted to shrink away, to disappear into the floorboards and avoid the humiliation. But another part, a small, stubborn spark inside her, felt a flicker of defiance. I can sing," she said softly, surprising even herself. Her voice trembled, but it was firm enough to catch their attention. The laughter died down slightly as the group exchanged glances. Someone shrugged. "All right then," one of them said, still grinning. "Prove it." The challenge hung heavy in the air. Maya knew this was a setup, a cruel prank designed to make her look foolish. Yet deep within her chest, something stirred, a mix of fear and determination. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the faint hope that she could turn this moment into something meaningful. Whatever it was, she nodded slowly. "Okay," she said, surprising herself again. "I'll do it." Word spread quickly about Maya's decision. By the time the assembly rolled around, whispers filled the auditorium. Students craned their necks to get a better view of the stage, curious to see how this shy, unassuming girl would fare. Teachers watched with mild interest, unsure what to expect. When Maya finally stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. She looked tiny under the bright lights, clutching the microphone with trembling hands. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. Was this a mistake? Should she have stayed in the shadows, safe from judgment? But then she remembered why she loved singing in the first place. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about sharing a piece of her soul. Taking a deep breath, Maya closed her eyes and began to sing. What happened next changed everything. For Maya, for her classmates, and for the entire school. Maya's voice rang out soft at first, like the gentle breeze rustling through the trees. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone leaned forward, curious to see what this shy girl would do next. Then, something extraordinary happened. As Maya found her footing, her voice began to grow stronger, richer, and more powerful. It wasn't just singing, it was storytelling. Every note carried emotion, every word painted a picture. She sang a gospel hymn her grandmother used to hum while cooking dinner on Sunday evenings. It was a song about hope, resilience, and faith. Themes that resonated deeply with Maya's own life. The audience didn't know what hit them. At first, there were murmurs of surprise, followed by complete silence as people realized they were witnessing something truly special. Teachers exchanged astonished looks, their jaws slightly dropped. Students who had come expecting to laugh or mock sat frozen in their seats, unable to tear their eyes away from the stage. Even the janitor, who usually stayed in the back during assemblies, stopped sweeping and stood still, transfixed. As Maya poured her heart into the song, she seemed to transform right before everyone's eyes. The nervous, trembling girl who had walked onto the stage moments earlier disappeared. In her place stood someone confident, radiant, and unstoppable. Her voice soared, filling the auditorium with an energy that felt almost magical. By the time she reached the final note, the entire room erupted into applause. People clapped, cheered, and whistled, some even rising to their feet without realizing it. For a moment, no one spoke. They simply let the sound of her voice linger in the air, savoring the beauty of what they had just experienced. But not everyone reacted with joy. While many were genuinely moved, others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some classmates whispered among themselves, trying to downplay what had just happened. "She got lucky," one muttered under his breath. Another rolled her eyes and said, "It's not that big of a deal." These reactions weren't lost on Maya. As she stepped off the stage, her legs still shaky from nerves, she couldn't help but notice the mix of admiration and resentment swirling around her. For the rest of the day, Maya became the center of attention, and not always in a good way. In the hallway, strangers congratulated her, telling her how amazing she sounded. A few teachers pulled her aside to praise her talent and ask if she'd ever considered joining the school choir. But behind closed doors, things were different. Some kids mocked her for showing off, claiming she thought she was better than everyone else now. Others accused her of using the assembly as a way to get attention. The very same performance that earned her praise also made her a target. At home that evening, Maya struggled to process everything that had happened. Her grandmother greeted her with a warm hug, saying how proud she was. "You showed them, child," she said, her voice filled with pride. "That voice of yours is a gift from God, and don't you forget it." Maya smiled, but inside, she felt conflicted. On one hand, she'd proven to herself and to everyone else that she was capable of greatness. On the other hand, she couldn't shake the feeling that this newfound recognition might come at a cost. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Maya replayed the events of the day over and over in her mind. She thought about the standing ovation, the cheers and the tears she saw in some of the teachers' eyes. But she also thought about the whispers, the jealous glances, and the snide comments. Would this moment change her life forever? Or would it only make things harder? The next morning, Maya woke up with a sense of determination she hadn't felt before. She decided that no matter what anyone said, she wouldn't let fear hold her back. Singing had given her a glimpse of what it felt like to be seen, to be heard, and to matter. And she wanted more of that, not just for herself, but for her grandmother, who had sacrificed so much to raise her. Over the following weeks, Maya threw herself into practicing. She spent hours after school perfecting her technique, experimenting with different styles, and learning new songs. Sometimes her grandmother would sit nearby, nodding along and offering gentle advice. Other times, Maya practiced alone, losing herself in the music until the world outside faded away. Each note brought her closer to understanding the power of her own voice, not just as a singer, but as a person. Word of her incredible performance at the assembly continued to spread throughout the community. Local newspapers picked up the story, running articles with headlines like, "Small-town girl stuns school with soul-stirring voice." Neighbors who had barely noticed her before suddenly stopped to compliment her. Strangers approached her in the grocery store asking if she was the girl everyone was talking about. For the first time in her life, Maya felt like she belonged somewhere, even if it was just on a stage. But fame, even on a small scale, came with its own set of challenges. Some classmates grew increasingly resentful, spreading rumors about her, or excluding her from conversations. Others tried to befriend her, though Maya suspected their intentions weren't entirely genuine. Through it all, she reminded herself why she started singing in the first place. Not for approval, but because it made her happy. Music was her anchor, keeping her grounded when the waves of doubt threatened to pull her under. One afternoon, her choir director, Mrs. Bennett, called her into her office. Mrs. Bennett was a kind woman in her 50s with a passion for nurturing young talent. She had been watching Maya closely since the assembly and saw potential in her that went far beyond the school walls. "I think you should consider entering a regional singing competition," Mrs. Bennett suggested, handing Maya a flyer. "It's a chance to showcase your talent on a bigger stage." Maya hesitated. Competitions meant facing judges, larger crowds, and competitors who likely had years of formal training. Could she really measure up? Sensing her hesitation, Mrs. Bennett placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You have something those other singers don't," she said firmly. "Heart. That's what sets you apart." Encouraged by Mrs. Bennett's words, Maya finally agreed to give it a try. Over the next few months, she worked tirelessly, fine-tuning her skills and building her confidence. With each practice session, she grew more certain of one thing. This was just the beginning of her journey. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew she could face them, as long as she kept singing her truth. The weeks leading up to the regional singing competition were a whirlwind for Maya. For the first time in her life, she had something to look forward to, something that felt bigger than herself. But it wasn't easy. Preparing for the competition meant juggling schoolwork, household chores, and hours of practice every single day. Her grandmother noticed how hard she was pushing herself and often reminded her to take breaks. "Child, you're going to wear yourself out," she'd say with a worried smile. "Remember, your voice is a gift, but so is your health." Maya nodded, though she couldn't help feeling like there wasn't enough time. She wanted to make sure she was ready, not just for herself, but for everyone who believed in her. Mrs. Bennett, her choir director, became her unofficial coach, guiding her through vocal exercises and helping her choose the perfect song for the competition. They settled on a soulful ballad that told a story of struggle and triumph, a theme Maya connected with deeply. It was as if the lyrics had been written just for her. Practicing wasn't just about hitting the right notes. It was about finding the emotion behind them. Maya spent hours standing in front of the mirror, trying to channel the feelings she wanted to convey. Sometimes tears would well up in her eyes as memories of all she'd been through came rushing back. The teasing, the loneliness, the moments when she doubted herself. But instead of letting those emotions weigh her down, she used them to fuel her performance. Each time she sang, it felt like she was shedding a layer of fear and stepping closer to becoming the person she was meant to be. As the competition date approached, nerves started creeping in. What if she froze on stage? What if the judges didn't like her voice? Or worse, what if people laughed at her again? These thoughts kept her awake at night, but they also pushed her to work even harder. She practiced until her throat was sore, and her legs ached from standing for so long. Her grandmother watched over her with quiet pride, occasionally humming along or offering words of encouragement. "You've got this, baby," she'd say. "Just sing like nobody's listening." On oi. The morning of the competition, Maya woke up before sunrise. She could feel the weight of the day ahead pressing down on her chest, but she tried to focus on the excitement rather than the fear. After getting dressed in her best outfit, an old dress her grandmother had sewn by hand, she packed her bag and headed to the bus stop. The ride to the city where the competition was being held felt endless. As the bus rattled along, Maya stared out the window, rehearsing the song in her head over and over again. When she arrived at the venue, her heart skipped a beat. The building was huge, far grander than anything she'd ever seen before. Inside, rows of chairs stretched toward the stage, which glimmered under bright lights. Contestants milled about nervously, some clutching sheet music, others warming up their voices. Maya spotted kids her age wearing expensive outfits and carrying fancy bags. Some had parents trailing behind them, whispering last-minute advice, or adjusting their hair. Compared to them, Maya felt plain and out of place. She clutched her grandmother's hand tightly, drawing strength from her presence. While waiting backstage, Maya listened as other contestants performed. There were singers with flawless technique, dancers who moved with incredible grace, and musicians whose instruments seemed like extensions of their bodies. Every act left the audience cheering, and with each performance, Maya's confidence wavered a little more. Could she really compete with these talented performers? Just when doubt began to creep in, Mrs. Bennett appeared beside her, giving her a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "You're here for a reason," she whispered. "Trust yourself." Finally, it was Maya's turn. As she stepped onto the stage, the spotlight hit her, blinding her momentarily. The crowd faded into a blur, leaving only the microphone in front of her. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and began to sing. At first, her voice trembled slightly, but as the melody unfolded, she found her rhythm. The words flowed effortlessly, carrying with them the weight of everything she'd experienced, the struggles, the victories, the hopes, and the dreams. By the time she reached the final note, the entire room erupted into applause. People stood, clapping and cheering, their faces glowing with admiration. When the judges announced the winners later that evening, Maya hardly dared to believe it when her name was called. She won first prize, earning not only a trophy but also a scholarship to attend a prestigious arts academy in New Orleans. Tears streamed down her face as she accepted the award, overwhelmed by the realization that her life was about to change in ways she never imagined. But winning came with its own set of challenges. Moving to New Orleans meant leaving behind everything familiar: her grandmother, her hometown, and the simplicity of the life she knew. Saying goodbye was one of the hardest things Maya had ever done. On the morning she left, her grandmother hugged her tightly, tears streaming down both their faces. "You go out there and show the world what you're made of," her grandmother said firmly, "and don't forget where you came from." At the academy, Maya quickly discovered that talent alone wasn't enough. The other students were polished and confident, many of them having trained for years in private lessons and elite programs. Some openly questioned whether someone like Maya, someone without formal training or connections, deserved to be there. Teachers, too, seemed skeptical at first, challenging her abilities and pushing her harder than anyone else. For a while, Maya felt like an outsider all over again. She missed home terribly and often wondered if she'd made a mistake coming here. But then she remembered why she was doing this, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever doubted her. So she dug deep, working twice as hard as anyone else. She stayed late after class to practice, asked questions whenever she didn't understand something, and poured her heart into every assignment. Slowly but surely, people began to take notice. One day, during a masterclass led by a famous musician visiting the academy, Maya was chosen to perform in front of the group. Nervous but determined, she sang with every ounce of passion she had. When she finished, the room fell silent for a moment before erupting into applause. The visiting musician himself stood up, shaking his head in disbelief. "That," he said, pointing at Maya, is what real artistry looks like, raw, honest, and unforgettable. Those words stayed with her, fueling her drive to keep going no matter how tough things got. By the end of her first year, Maya had earned the respect of her peers and teachers alike. More importantly, she had proven to herself that she belonged. Though the road ahead would still have its ups and downs, Maya knew she was exactly where she was meant to be, and with each step forward, she carried the love and support of her grandmother, and the unshakable belief that her voice had the power to change lives, including her own. Maya's journey at the Arts Academy in New Orleans was far from smooth. The city itself was a whirlwind of sights, sounds, and energy, a stark contrast to the quiet, predictable rhythm of her small hometown. Every street seemed alive with music, from jazz bands playing in smoky clubs to street performers belting out soulful tunes on busy corners. At first, Maya found it exhilarating, but as the weeks went by, the novelty wore off, replaced by the harsh realities of her new life. The academy was a world unlike anything she'd ever known. Students came from all over the country, many of them from wealthy families who had invested heavily in their education. They spoke confidently about private tutors, summer programs in Europe, and connections in the music industry, things Maya couldn't even begin to relate to. She often felt like an outsider, sitting quietly in class while others shared stories of glamorous performances or high-profile mentors. Her simple background and lack of formal training set her apart, and not always in a good way. Some instructors were tough on her, pushing her harder than anyone else. "You have raw talent," one teacher told her after a particularly grueling vocal lesson, "but talent alone won't cut it here. You need discipline, technique, and polish." Those words stung, but Maya knew they were true. She threw herself into her studies, practicing until her voice cracked and her body ached. Late nights became her norm as she worked tirelessly to catch up with classmates who seemed light years ahead. But it wasn't just the academics that challenged her. Socially, Maya struggled to fit in. Many students formed tight-knit cliques, bonding over shared experiences and inside jokes she didn't understand. Some openly mocked her for being country or accused her of riding on sympathy votes to get into the academy. Others pretended to be friendly, only to gossip behind her back or exclude her from group activities. It hurt, but Maya refused to let it break her. Instead, she channeled her pain into her music, using it as fuel to push herself even harder. One of the hardest moments came during a group project. Each student was assigned to collaborate with peers on a performance piece. When Maya's name was called, she noticed the subtle eye rolls and sighs from some of her teammates. They barely acknowledged her ideas during rehearsals, treating her like an afterthought. On the night of the performance, however, something remarkable happened. As soon as Maya opened her mouth to sing, the audience fell silent. Her voice soared above the rest, commanding attention and leaving everyone breathless. By the time the final note faded, the room erupted into applause. Her teammates, who had dismissed her earlier, now looked at her with newfound respect and maybe even a hint of guilt. That moment marked a turning point for Maya. Slowly but surely, people began to see her for who she truly was. Not just a talented singer, but a resilient and determined young woman who refused to give up no matter how tough things got. Teachers started assigning her lead roles in performances, recognizing her ability to captivate an audience. Classmates who once ignored her now sought her advice on vocal techniques or asked to partner with her on projects. Even the harshest critics softened, admitting that Maya's authenticity and passion made her stand out in a sea of polished perfection. Despite these victories, Maya never forgot where she came from. Whenever homesickness hit, which was often, she would call her grandmother, sharing her triumphs and struggles. "You're doing just fine, baby," her grandmother would say, her voice warm and steady. "Keep your head high and your heart open. That's how you'll make it through." Her grandmother's wisdom kept Maya grounded, reminding her why she was working so hard. She didn't want fame or riches. She wanted to create opportunities for people like her, young artists, from humble beginnings who dreamed of making it big but lacked the resources to do so. This vision inspired her to start volunteering at local community centers, teaching free singing workshops to kids who reminded her of herself. Seeing their faces light up as they discovered their own voices filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt before. As her skills improved, Maya began performing at local venues around New Orleans. At first, it was small gigs, coffee shops, church events, and charity fundraisers, but word of her talent spread quickly. Soon, she was invited to perform at larger concerts and festivals, sharing the stage with seasoned professionals. Each performance brought new challenges but also new lessons. She learned how to connect with diverse audiences, how to handle criticism gracefully, and most importantly, how to stay true to herself amidst the pressure to conform. One evening, after a particularly successful show, a man approached her backstage. He introduced himself as a talent scout for a major record label. "I've been watching you for a while now," he said, his tone serious yet kind. "You've got something special, something real. We'd love to work with you." For a moment, Maya was speechless. All those years of doubt, struggle, and sacrifice had led to this moment. She thanked him politely, promising to think it over, but deep down she knew this was the opportunity she'd been waiting for. Returning to her dorm that night, Maya sat by the window, staring out at the glittering lights of the city. Her mind raced with possibilities but also with questions. Was she ready for this next step? Could she handle the pressures of fame without losing sight of who she was? Most importantly, could she use her platform to uplift others and make a difference in the world? The answer came to her in the form of a memory, a vivid image of herself as a shy teenager stepping onto that school auditorium stage for the very first time. Back then, she had no idea what the future held, but she had taken the leap anyway, trusting that her voice would carry her through. Now, years later, she realized that same courage and determination would guide her forward. Maya smiled, to herself feeling a renewed sense of clarity. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it head on, armed with the lessons she'd learned along the way. She wasn't just singing for herself anymore, she was singing for everyone who had ever doubted her, for every child who felt invisible, and for every dreamer who refused to give up. And with each note she sang, she carried a piece of her grandmother's love, her hometown's resilience, and her own unshakable belief in the power of hope. For Maya, this was more than just a career. It was a calling, and she was ready to answer it. Signing with the record label was a dream come true, but it also marked the beginning of a whole new chapter, one filled with challenges Maya hadn't anticipated. The studio executives were excited about her raw talent and unique voice, but they had their own ideas about how to shape her into a star. At first, everything seemed exciting. She was given access to world-class producers, songwriters, and stylists who promised to help her craft an image that would appeal to millions. But as the weeks went by, Maya began to feel like she was losing pieces of herself in the process. The label wanted her to sing pop songs designed for radio play, catchy tunes with flashy beats and lyrics about love and heartbreak. While these tracks weren't bad, they didn't feel authentic to Maya. Her heart lay in soulful ballads and gospel-inspired melodies that told stories of struggle, hope, and resilience, the kind of music that had carried her through her toughest days. When she tried to express this to the team, they brushed her off, saying, "This is what sells, trust us." Maya felt torn. On one hand, she understood their reasoning. After all, she'd worked so hard to get here, and walking away now would mean giving up on years of effort. But on the other hand, she couldn't shake the feeling that compromising her artistry would betray not only herself, but also the people who had supported her along the way. Late at night, when everyone else was asleep, she sat alone in her tiny apartment, scribbling lyrics and humming melodies that felt true to her soul. These private moments became her sanctuary, a reminder of why she started singing in the first place. One day, during a meeting with the creative team, Maya decided to take a stand. She brought a folder filled with original songs she'd written, each one inspired by her life experiences. "I want to record these," she said firmly, though her hands trembled slightly. The room fell silent as the executives flipped through the pages, their expressions unreadable. Finally, one of them spoke up. "These are different," he said cautiously. "But if you believe in them, we'll give it a shot." Recording her debut album turned out to be both exhilarating and exhausting. Maya poured every ounce of emotion into each track, determined to make sure her story came through loud and clear. There were moments when frustration bubbled over, like when she argued with the producer about keeping certain lines, or when she stayed up all night reworking a melody, but there were also moments of pure joy. Hearing her finish songs for the first time made her heart swell with pride. This was her truth, her voice, her journey, and no one could take that away from her. When the album was finally released, Maya held her breath, unsure of how people would react. To her amazement, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Critics praised her authenticity, calling her voice a force of nature, and her lyrics poignant and powerful. Fans connected deeply with her music, sharing stories of how her songs helped them through tough times. Within weeks, her single climbed the charts, eventually reaching #1. Suddenly, Maya wasn't just a rising star, she was a household name. With fame came opportunities Maya had only dreamed of. She performed on late-night talk shows, appeared on magazine covers, and even sang at prestigious award ceremonies. Everywhere she went, people cheered her name, holding up signs that read, "You inspire us," or "Thank you for your music." For someone who had once felt invisible, being seen and celebrated was surreal. Yet despite the glitz and glamour, Maya remained grounded. She never forgot where she came from, or the struggles that had shaped her. One of her proudest moments came when she returned to her hometown for a benefit concert. Thousands of people gathered in the park where she used to play as a child, eager to hear her sing live. As she stepped onto the stage, she scanned the crowd, recognizing familiar faces, her grandmother sitting proudly in the front row, Mrs. Bennett, her former choir director, and even some of the classmates who had once teased her. For a moment she froze, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. Then she smiled, closed her eyes, and began to sing. The performance was electric. People swayed to the rhythm, clapped along to the beat, and sang the words back to her. When she finished, the applause was deafening, lasting long after she left the stage. Backstage, old acquaintances approached her, tears streaming down their faces. "We're so proud of you," one of them said, his voice choked with emotion. Another admitted, "I was wrong about you back then. You've always been special." Hearing those words brought closure to wounds Maya didn't realize were still open. Forgiveness came naturally. It wasn't in her nature to hold grudges. After the concert, Maya spent the weekend visiting places that held memories of her childhood. She walked through the halls of her old school, remembering the day she stood on that same stage and silenced the bullies with her voice. She visited the church where she'd learned to sing hymns alongside her grandmother, and she stopped by the trailer where she grew up, running her fingers over the faded paint and thinking about how far she'd come. That trip home reignited something within her, a desire to give back to the community that had shaped her. Maya knew firsthand how hard it was to chase big dreams without support, resources, or encouragement. Determined to change that for others, she founded a nonprofit organization called Voices Unheard. Its mission was simple: to provide underserved youth with the tools and opportunities they needed to pursue their passions. Through workshops, mentorship programs, and scholarships, Maya hoped to create a pipeline of talent that wouldn't go unnoticed or unsupported. She threw herself into the work, traveling across the country to speak at schools, community centers, and conferences. Her message was always the same: don't let anyone tell you that your dreams are too big or your voice too small. You have worth, and the world needs what only you can offer. Young artists flocked to her events, eager to learn from someone who had walked in their shoes. Many credited her with helping them find the courage to keep going when things got tough. As the years passed, Maya's legacy grew beyond her chart-topping hits and sold-out concerts. She became a symbol of hope and resilience, proof that greatness could emerge from the most unlikely places. Her story inspired documentaries, books, and even a feature film about her life. Yet, despite the accolades, Maya stayed humble. She continued to prioritize her family, her faith, and her commitment to uplifting others. Late one evening, as she sat on the porch of her grandmother's house, Maya reflected on how far she'd come. The little girl who had once felt invisible was now shining brighter than ever. But more importantly, she had stayed true to herself, using her voice not just to entertain, but to empower. The road ahead might still hold challenges, but Maya knew she was ready to face them. After all, she had already proven that even the quietest voices could change the world. Years turned into decades, and Maya's impact on the world only grew stronger. Her music became timeless, a soundtrack to countless lives, played at graduations, weddings, funerals, and quiet moments of reflection. But what truly set her apart wasn't just her voice. It was the way she used it to lift others up. Through Voices Unheard, she built a movement that reached far beyond anything she could have imagined when she first stepped onto that school stage as a shy teenager. The nonprofit expanded rapidly, thanks in large part to Maya's relentless dedication. She traveled tirelessly, visiting underserved communities across the country and even internationally. In each place, she held workshops where young artists learned not just how to sing or play instruments, but how to believe in themselves. Talent is important, she often told them, but confidence is what will carry you through the hard times. Her words resonated deeply with participants, many of whom had never been encouraged to dream big before meeting her. One of the most transformative initiatives under Voices Unheard was the creation of recording studios in low-income neighborhoods. These spaces weren't just for making music. They were safe havens where kids could escape the chaos of their daily lives and find solace in creativity. Maya personally oversaw the design of these studios, ensuring they were equipped with state-of-the-art technology while still feeling warm and welcoming. She wanted every child who walked through the doors to feel like they belonged, no matter their background or skill level. To fund these projects, Maya hosted annual benefit concerts that drew fans from around the globe. The events were more than performances. They were celebrations of resilience and community. Artists of all ages took the stage, sharing their talents alongside Maya herself. There were moments of laughter, tears, and standing ovations. But above all, there was unity. People from different walks of life came together, united by their love of music and their admiration for someone who had turned pain into purpose. As time went on, Maya began to receive recognition, not just as an artist, but as a humanitarian. Awards lined the walls of her home, though she rarely spoke about them. For her, the real reward was seeing the ripple effect of her work. Former students of Voices Unheard started breaking barriers in industries once closed to people like them. Some became successful musicians while others pursued careers in education, activism, and business. Each success story reminded Maya why she had fought so hard to stay true to herself. It wasn't just about personal achievement. It was about paving the way for others. Despite her global fame, Maya remained deeply connected to her roots. Every Christmas, she returned to her hometown to spend the holiday with her grandmother, who was now elderly but still full of wisdom and humor. They spent hours cooking meals together, reminiscing about old memories and marveling at how much life had changed. One year, as they sat by the fireplace sipping hot cocoa, her grandmother said something that stuck with Maya forever. No, baby, I always knew you'd do great things. But what makes me proudest isn't the awards or the fame, it's the fact that you've stayed kind. That's your greatest gift. Her grandmother's words echoed in Maya's mind long after the visit ended. Kindness had indeed been a guiding force throughout her journey. Even during her darkest days when doubt threatened to consume her, she had chosen compassion over bitterness. She had forgiven those who wronged her, supported those in need, and kept her heart open despite the challenges she faced. It was this kindness combined with her unwavering determination that allowed her to touch so many lives. In her later years, Maya slowed down slightly, though she never stopped working. She wrote a memoir detailing her life, from the struggles of her childhood to the triumphs of her career. Writing the book was cathartic, forcing her to confront parts of her past she had buried deep inside. When it was finally published, it became an instant bestseller, praised for its honesty and vulnerability. Readers wrote letters thanking her for sharing her story, saying it gave them hope during their own battles. One letter stood out to Maya, a note from a teenage girl named Tasha who lived in a rough neighborhood similar to the one Maya had grown up in. "I didn't think anyone like me could make it," Tasha wrote. "But reading your book made me realize I'm not alone. Thank you for showing me that my dreams are possible." Maya immediately invited Tasha to visit one of the Voices Unheard studios, eager to meet the young woman whose words had touched her so deeply. Their connection was immediate, and over time Tasha became one of Maya's closest mentees. As Maya grew older, she began thinking more about the legacy she would leave behind. She knew her music would live on, but she wanted to ensure that Voices Unheard continued to thrive long after she was gone. To achieve this, she established a board of directors composed of former students and trusted colleagues. Together, they developed a plan to expand the organization's reach, bringing its programs to even more communities worldwide. On a crisp autumn evening, Maya attended the grand opening of a new studio in a bustling city halfway around the world. As she stood on stage addressing the crowd, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Looking out at the sea of hopeful faces, young singers, dancers, poets, and dreamers, she realized her mission was complete. She had planted seeds of possibility, and now they were blossoming into something beautiful. When Maya passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 82, the world mourned the loss of a legend. Tributes poured in from fans, fellow artists, and world leaders alike. Yet the most heartfelt messages came from those whose lives she had directly touched. The young boy who picked up a guitar because of her encouragement, the single mother who found strength in her lyrics, the aspiring songwriter who dared to pursue his passion because of her example. Maya's story didn't end with her death. If anything, it took on new life. Her music continued to inspire generations, and Voices Unheard flourished, carrying forward her vision of a world where everyone had the chance to shine. Decades later, historians referred to her as the voice that changed the world, not because of the notes she sang, but because of the lives she transformed. And though she was no longer here to see it, Maya's spirit lived on, in the melodies that played on radios, in the laughter of children learning to express themselves, and in the hearts of countless individuals who believed in their own potential because she had shown them the way. Her final message to the world was simple yet profound. Your voice matters. Use it wisely, use it boldly, and let it be a light for others. And so Maya's legacy endured, a testament to the power of authenticity, resilience, and love.